I hadn't been home in almost a year when the message came through. It was a Thursday evening. I was just getting off work, keys in hand, brain already cycling through whether I had enough clean laundry or if dinner would be cereal again. That's when my phone buzzed. "Hey honey, can you come by this weekend? We need to have a family meeting. It's important." The text was from my mom. No emoji. No warmth. Just straight to the point, which was rare for her. She always padded hard conversations with awkward pleasantries. This was bare. First I thought someone was sick. Or worse. But when I called, her voice didn't sound frantic or heartbroken. Just weirdly calm. "We just need to talk through a few things," she said. "Your dad and I will explain everything when you're here. It's about the past, kind of. Just please come." That made my stomach knot. Something in her tone sent a ripple through me. Not the normal mom guilt kind. Something else. Something heavier. I hesitated, standing in the kitchen of my small, too-quiet apartment, staring at the blinking microwave clock as if it would give me an answer. Then I said, "Okay." Saturday morning. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay awake thinking about every possible scenario. Did Dad lose his job? Was someone sick and not saying anything? Did my younger brother, Ryan, get arrested? Again. By the time Saturday came, I was a wreck of nerves. The drive to my childhood home, a place I once loved, felt longer than usual. The closer I got, the more that old ache bubbled up. I hadn't grown up in a broken home exactly, but I had always felt like the backup plan. Ryan, being the youngest and the only boy, was the star. The one they bent rules for, made sacrifices for, covered up for. He was the chaos, I was the cleanup crew. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a few minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to read the house like it was a stranger's face. The curtains were pulled back. The porch light was on, even in the daylight. Something felt staged. I walked in without knocking. That's how they always insisted it be. "It's your home too, Susan." But it didn't feel like home anymore. Inside they were already waiting. My mom was perched on the edge of the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Dad sat in his armchair like he was settling in for a court hearing. And Ryan was slouched in the corner, arms crossed, eyes flicking toward the TV but not watching. No one smiled when I came in. No one said, "Happy to see you." Just silence, thick and awkward. That's when my mom patted the seat next to her. "Come sit. We need to tell you something." And I knew. Right then, before a word was said. This wasn't going to be an update. It was going to be a confession. And my entire life was about to be reframed by the truth. I sat down slowly, the air thick enough to choke on. My mother's hand twitched toward mine but didn't commit. My father looked straight ahead, not at me, not at anyone. Just at the blank space above the coffee table. Ryan shifted in his seat like the couch was made of nails. Nobody spoke. Finally, my mom cleared her throat. We wanted to talk to you together as a family. Because this is something we should have said a long time ago." She glanced nervously at my dad. He gave her the slightest nod. Then she turned back to me with a look I can only describe as guilty hope. Like she knew she was about to ruin something, but was still clinging to the idea I might thank her afterward. That was the first insult. "Ryan's been through some hard times," she started. "And we didn't want to burden you with everything, especially when you were younger." And blinked. "Okay." Dad finally spoke, gruff and short. "It's about your college fund." Something cold crept up my spine. "What about it?" Another glance between them. Then my mom said it like she was reading off a script, word by word, no inflection, no emotion. "We used it to pay off your brother's gambling debts." Silence. My brain didn't process it at first. Just sold. "You did what?" I asked slowly, not because I didn't hear, but because my mouth didn't know what else to say. Dad rubbed the bridge of his nose. "It was a long time ago. You were just finishing high school. Ryan was in a bad situation, and we didn't know what else to do." My mom added, "It wasn't safe. He owed the wrong people and we couldn't let him get hurt. We thought you'd get scholarships or maybe take a gap year. You were always so smart. So strong. That was the second insult. I felt something inside me twist, slow and sharp. That college fund was supposed to be mine. I had turned down so many dreams thinking, we can't afford it. I had blamed myself. I had assumed I wasn't worth investing in. That I wasn't chosen because I didn't earn it. But all along they had the money. They just gave it to him. My eyes shot to Ryan. He didn't look at me. Not even a flicker of remorse. Just sat there, silent, jaw set like this was some inconvenience. I stood up, my voice low and dangerous. You let me believe we were broke. My mother's eyes welled with tears. We didn't know how to tell you. And you were always so independent, Susan. We thought you'd understand. And that was the third insult. Because they didn't think I'd understand. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd take it. But this time I wouldn't. This time I felt everything I had buried rise up like a wave, ready to crash. They had drained my future and handed it to the one person who never protected his own. And now they expected forgiveness. But all I had left was fury. I didn't sit back down. I stood there, knees slightly bent, hands clenched at my sides, my heart pounding in my ears like a warning siren. Every second that passed stretched like it wanted to snap in half. I looked at my parents, then at Ryan, still sunk into the couch like he belonged there, like he didn't owe me anything. You used my college fund, I repeated, my voice hollow. To cover his gambling? My father leaned forward, elbows on his knees. We were scared. Ryan owed a lot. We were getting calls at the house. People threatening to come by. We didn't want to call the police. We didn't want to ruin his future. And there it was. The fourth insult. They were willing to ruin mine to protect his. Do you know what I went through? I asked, my voice rising. I worked 2 jobs. I lived in a studio apartment with mold in the ceiling. I dropped out after my first semester because I thought I was the problem. I thought I didn't deserve college. That maybe I wasn't good enough. My mom was crying now, whispering, we didn't mean for it to turn out like this. No, I snapped. You meant exactly what you did. You chose him. You chose to lie to me. And then you watched me suffer and said nothing. Ryan finally spoke, arms still crossed. Look, I didn't ask them to do it. I had a problem. Got clean. Why are we dredging this up now? I turned to him slowly. Because they let me carry the weight of their lie while you got a fresh start. He rolled his eyes. It's not like you were ever gonna go to Harvard or something. You're fine now. The fifth insult. Dismissal wrapped in arrogance. The kind of casual cruelty that comes from never having to face consequences. My dad stood. We're telling you now because we thought you deserved to know. We can't change what happened. But we hope one day you'll see that we did it for the family. I laughed, cold and bitter. Don't use that word. This wasn't about family. This was about Ryan. It's always about Ryan. No one denied it. I grabbed my bag and turned toward the door. Where are you going? My mom called after me. Home, I said without looking back. To the place where I don't have to pretend this is normal. As the door shut behind me, I realized what hurt the most wasn't just the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the knowledge that the people who were supposed to believe in me the most never did. I didn't cry when I got into the car. Not when I turned the key. Not when I backed out of the driveway of the house I once called home. The tears didn't come until I hit the highway. Somewhere between the exit ramp and the first gas station. That's when the full weight of it crashed down. Not just the betrayal but everything behind it. They let me think I wasn't good enough. That's what hit the hardest. I remembered every single rejection letter I blamed on myself. Every shift I worked past midnight trying to afford just one more credit hour. Every moment I questioned whether I was smart enough, driven enough, worthy enough of success. I remembered sitting in the back of a community college class, surrounded by 19-year-olds, ashamed that I was still trying to finish my degree while working weekends at a diner. I remembered dropping out after I couldn't afford the books, thinking if this were important, my parents would have helped. But maybe they know I'm not worth it. Now I knew the truth. They had helped, just not me. I pulled into a rest stop and parked in the far corner, hands gripping the steering wheel like it might hold me together. For a long time I didn't move. Just sat there, letting the betrayal rise up from a place so deep, I didn't even know it existed. My parents had watched me struggle. Not just financially but emotionally. They had watched me lower my standards, bury my dreams, and twist myself into someone realistic. And all that time they stayed silent. Because to them my stability was expendable. My dreams were negotiable. My sacrifice was a given. I looked down at my hands that had carried the weight of my future alone, and I felt something shift. This wasn't sadness anymore. It was something sharper. I thought I'd come out of that house with answers. Instead, I came out with clarity. I had never been their priority. And now, I would never be their puppet again. That night I turned off my phone. I couldn't stomach the sound of it buzzing with damage control texts. Apologies that weren't really apologies, or worse, explanations dressed up as empathy. But the next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I turned it back on. And there they were. One from Mom. "Susan, please understand, we didn't want to lose him. We were scared. We thought we were doing the right thing. You've always been so strong." One from Dad. "It was a desperate time. Your brother was in over his head. If you'd seen what we saw, you'd understand why we acted." And one from Ryan. "This again. Come on, I was a kid. I didn't ask for any of that. They did what parents do. Get over it." There it was. The full trinity of justification, guilt, and gaslight. What they all failed to realize was that it wasn't just the money they took. It was my belief in them. They wanted me to see it as a tough decision. A sacrifice for the greater good. A temporary detour that strong Susan could recover from. But none of that addressed what they really did. They lied. They let me suffer. And when the truth came out, they treated my pain like a bad reaction instead of a valid one. They expected me to be the mature one, the adult, the understanding daughter. Because that's who I'd always been. The resilient one. The fixer. The afterthought. I reread my mom's message. "You've always been so strong." And suddenly I hated that word. They'd turned my strength into their excuse. They weren't sorry they did it. They were sorry I finally found out. Because now the balance had shifted. Now, I wasn't the obedient daughter who swallowed her hurt. I was a woman who saw the truth, and wouldn't unsee it. And that terrified them. I held it together longer than I thought I would. I went to work, answered emails, smiled when I had to, said I'm fine. So many times it started to sound like another person's voice. But inside, everything was unraveling. A week after the family meeting, I was folding laundry when it hit me. One minute I was pairing socks. The next, I was on the floor of my apartment, sobbing so violently I couldn't catch my breath. It wasn't just about the car or the tuition or the years lost. It was about me. The me I had abandoned because I thought no one believed in her. I saw flashes of my 18-year-old self, full of ambition, her eyes wide with possibility, sitting at the kitchen table with college brochures. I remembered the way my mother smiled thinly and said, "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." The way my father looked at the tuition column and muttered, "Not worth the debt." I thought they were being cautious, realistic, that they were trying to protect me. But they weren't. They were already planning to use my future as currency for Ryan's mistakes. I grieved that girl. That version of Susan who dreamed of studying literature, who wanted to write, to teach, to create something beautiful. The version who slowly faded out over the years, buried under bills and side jobs and silent resentment. I grieved the years I spent telling myself I just wasn't meant for more. And beneath the grief was rage. Pure, blistering, righteous rage. They never apologized. They never tried to rebuild. They just told me to move on. But how do you move on from betrayal that shaped your entire life? How do you heal from a wound you didn't know you had until decades later? That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up writing, pouring every ounce of heartbreak onto the page. For the first time in years, I let myself feel everything. No filters. No guilt. Just the truth. Because if my family wouldn't acknowledge my pain, then I would. And that acknowledgement, that was the beginning of my healing. In the days that followed, I didn't respond to any more texts. I didn't return the missed calls, didn't check the voicemails. I let the silence hang, loud and uncomfortable. And it was mine. Then the messages turned. I know you're upset, but don't throw away your family over a mistake made out of love. You're being unfair. We've done everything we could for you. From Ryan. Seriously. Are you still mad? They saved me. You should be grateful they didn't just let me spiral. You're making this a thing it doesn't need to be. There it was, the full collapse. Guilt. Deflection. Entitlement. No ownership. No real apology. Just desperation to get back to the old dynamics, where I swallowed everything and smiled like a good daughter. But I didn't reply. Instead, I started cleaning house, digitally and emotionally. I blocked Ryan first. I didn't need to carry the weight of someone who hadn't even attempted to say, "I'm sorry." Then I muted the family group chat. Every message felt like another hand reaching into my chest, trying to rearrange my emotions to fit their version of events. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it out of survival. People like them. People who can betray you and then ask you to fix it, don't understand boundaries unless they're enforced. One Saturday I drove past my old high school and parked outside for a while. It sounds silly, but I needed to face the place where my dreams had first taken shape. Back when I thought anything was possible if I just worked hard enough. Back before I learned how fragile support can be when it's conditional. I whispered something into the wind, just for me. I'm done carrying what you broke. And in that moment, I didn't feel like a daughter anymore. Felt like a survivor. And more than that, I felt like a woman reclaiming her story. Something changed in me after that. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but like a quiet storm had passed and left behind clarity. The kind that makes you sit down, take stock of your life, and finally ask, what do I want now? For the first time in over a decade, I signed up for a creative writing workshop. Not to prove anything. Not to pad a resume. Just because I wanted to. Because the girl I used to be, who once wrote short stories in spiral notebooks and dreamed of teaching literature, deserved that. I also started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I was tired of pretending betrayal didn't leave scars. My therapist didn't rush me to forgive, didn't urge me to call them back. She simply said, "You get to define what healing looks like. Not them." I began to understand that I had built a whole life out of emotional scraps, out of "you're so strong" and "we had no choices," and now I was ready to build something better. For me. No more begging for crumbs. No more dimming my light to fit inside their shadow. No more apologizing for finally choosing myself. Every week I worked a little more, saved a little more, and slowly I began planning something bold, applying to a degree completion program. Something I once thought was lost forever. It would take time, sure. I'd be older than the rest of the students. But that no longer mattered. Because I was no longer ashamed of my timeline. I was proud of my resilience. The betrayal no longer owned me. I did. And even though my family hadn't changed, I had. And that was enough to tip the balance of my entire world. Months passed. Seasons shifted. And so did I. I didn't speak to my family again, not because I hated them, but because I had finally accepted something I had resisted my entire life. Closure doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it comes in the form of peace. Sometimes it's just quiet. And one evening, as I sat outside my apartment with my laptop open, the sky turning to that soft orange just before sunset, I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for an "I'm sorry." Not for "we were wrong." Not for Ryan to finally understand what he'd taken from me. I had stopped hoping they'd see me, because I had learned to see myself. I hit submit on my college re-enrollment application. My fingers trembled, but my heart didn't. I wasn't chasing the old dream anymore. I was building a new one, shaped not by what they stole, but by what I chose to rebuild. Later that night I got an email. Accepted. Not to some Ivy League school. Not to anything Instagram-worthy. Just a small local university with flexible classes for adult learners. And it was perfect. I sat with it for a moment, letting it settle. Letting it mean everything it needed to. Because after all the lies, all the silence, all the years of feeling second place in my own story, I had finally put myself first. No celebration from them. No calls. No cards. Just me in my tiny kitchen making tea, smiling like a woman who knows her worth now. And for once, that was all the closure I needed. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just freedom. And the decision to never again let anyone else write the ending for me. This time I was holding the pen.